My husband died with $540,000 in a trust, and my name was not anywhere in it. His son had that arranged 8 months before the funeral, and 3 lawyers told me it was perfectly legal. The room where I found out had a water pitcher nobody poured from, and it took him about 4 minutes to read the whole thing out loud. My name is Delia. My husband was Emmett, and the man reading was his son Russell, from the marriage before mine. What he read was an amendment to my husband's trust, signed on the 14th of June, 2021. My husband died on the 9th of February 2022, so it was 8 months old when it started working. It restated the trust from the beginning, and in the restating it removed me as a beneficiary and named his son the sole successor trustee. It left me the right to live in the house for 6 months and a payment of $15,000. That was the entire provision for a wife of 16 years. To sign it, his son drove my husband 90 miles to a bank branch in another county, and then drove him 90 miles home again. Every lawyer I brought it to used the same patient voice. They told me it was drafted properly, executed properly, and witnessed properly, and not one of them was wrong. The trust itself was built in 2009, years before he ever met me. He put everything he owned inside it because he did not want his family to see the inside of a courthouse. There are 2 dates on that amendment. The signature is dated the 14th of June, and the notary stamp underneath it is dated the 20th, and for 3 years I never once asked why. I put my copy in the drawer under the phone, and I did not look at it again until it mattered. About a month later, a woman at work told me that a husband cannot simply cut his wife out. She said there was a name for it, and she was right that there is. It is called the elective share. A surviving spouse who is written out can refuse what the documents say and take a fixed statutory portion instead. For about 9 days, I believed I was going to be fine, and I want that part on the record too. The first lawyer let me finish before he explained it. He was kind about it, and he was also completely correct. An elective share, he said, is a share of the probate estate. That means the property a person still holds in his own name on the day he dies. My husband held almost nothing in his own name. There was a pickup truck and a checking account, and together they came to about $3,100. So my share was a fraction of $3,100, and the arithmetic he did on his pad came to about half of that. Filing for it would have cost me $435 and taken the better part of a year. He advised me not to do it, and on the law he was describing, that was good advice. I asked 2 more lawyers over the following year, and both told me the same thing in almost the same words. After the 3rd one, I stopped asking. That is the part people find hardest to believe, and it is the easiest part of this to explain. When 3 professionals in a row tell you the same sentence, you do not decide they are wrong. You decide you are foolish to hope, and you go find a room to rent. Here is what all 3 of them were describing. They were describing the rule the way it used to be, and the rule had moved underneath them. An elective share is no longer measured against the probate estate. It is measured against something the statute calls the augmented estate, and the augmented estate is a much bigger thing. The augmented estate starts with the probate estate and then reaches outward, and it pulls back in the property a person moved outside of probate while he was alive. And it names one of them directly. It reaches property the person was holding in a revocable trust at the moment he died. The reasoning is almost blunt. A man who keeps the power to take a thing back has not truly handed it to anybody, so for this one purpose, the law says it is still his. The whole case turns on a single word, and that word is not funded and it is not amended. The word is revocable, and it is doing every bit of the work in this story. Had my husband made that trust irrevocable in 2009, the property would have genuinely left him that year. It would have been outside the augmented estate and outside my reach, and his son would have been entirely right. But he never did make it irrevocable. He kept the power to change it for 12 years, and we know for certain that he still had that power because of what happened in June 2021. His son used that power. You cannot amend a trust that cannot be amended, so the amendment itself is the proof that the trust was still revocable. So the base was never $3,100. The base was the trust, and the truck, and the account together, which came to about $543,000. After a marriage of 16 years, the statutory portion in our state reaches its top step, which is half. Half of that number is a little over $271,000, which raises the only question that actually mattered by then. If the answer was sitting in a statute the whole time, why did it take almost 3 years to reach me? Because in those 3 years, I was busy losing things. That is what being wrong about the law actually looks like from the inside. I had 6 months in the house and I used all of them. On the last morning, I swept a floor that was not going to be mine by lunchtime. The room I moved into cost $12,250 a month. It had a window that faced a parking lot and a radiator that came on at 5 in the morning. I took work setting up events. Banquet rooms mostly, which means chairs and linens and coffee urns, and being finished before the guests arrive. The $15,000 lasted about 14 months. It went where money like that always goes, which is into the ordinary bills of a person who has stopped earning what she used to earn. I stopped going to the dentist. I stopped driving to see my sister, and I told her it was the gas prices, which was true and was not the reason. His son, in the meantime, did nothing dramatic with the money. He paid down a mortgage and he put 2 children through school. He also called me twice a year, at Christmas and on my husband's birthday. He asked how I was, and he meant it, and I want that on the record. He was not careless, and he was not cruel. He was a meticulous man who had been told a rule by people who knew rules, and he applied it exactly. And the rule he applied was the one everybody learned first. Trust property sits outside probate, and an elective share touches probate, so trust property is safe. That sentence was true for a long time, and it is still true in a few places. It was not true in ours, and nobody in this story went and checked, which is how a woman stacking chairs learned it from the back of a room. In November 2024, I was working a lunch I had not been invited to. It was a bar association luncheon, and the speaker had finished and gone. Nobody had turned the projector off, and the last slide was still burning on the screen at the front. I was carrying chairs 8 at a time on a cart. Every trip up the room I passed under that beam, and the slide did not change. It had a heading and 4 lines under it. I had read the heading maybe 6 times before it went in. The heading was about what goes into the augmented estate. The second line under it said property held in a revocable trust at death. I put the cart down in the middle of the aisle. I took out my phone and I photographed that slide, and then I photographed it again closer. I did not understand it yet. I understood only that 2 words on that wall were the exact 2 words 3 lawyers had never once said to me. I read the statute that night on a laptop with a broken hinge. It took me until about 2 in the morning to be sure that I had read it correctly. And then I found the part that almost ended it. An election like mine has a deadline, and mine looked like it had expired 2 years earlier. The statute gives you 9 months from the date of death. It also gives you 6 months from the probate of the will, and you get whichever of those 2 runs out later. No will was ever probated in my husband's name. There was nothing to probate, because the trust already held everything, which was the entire point of building it. His son had moved the truck with a short affidavit instead, which costs almost nothing and is not a probate of anything. So the second clock never started, and a clock that never starts cannot run out. I filed in the spring. The lawyer who took it read the statute twice in front of me and then apologized to me on behalf of people he had never met. And then we hit the thing I had never thought about. Nobody could find the original trust from 2009. The firm that drafted it had dissolved, and my husband's own copy went missing somewhere in 12 years of moving house. Without it, nothing in the world proved what that trust said, or whether he could still change it, except for one document. The amendment his son commissioned restated the trust from the beginning, which means it carried the terms forward inside itself. And underneath it sat the notary's certificate, with the second date on it. The one I had looked at for 3 years without ever asking the question. The notary at that branch had been doing the job for 19 years. She would not put her seal on a signature she had not personally watched a person make. On the 14th of June, my husband signed it at home, at the kitchen table, where signing things is comfortable. She refused it, and she was right to refuse it. So on the 20th of June, his son put his father back in the car, drove the 90 miles a second time, and stood beside him while he signed his name again in front of her. And she stamped it. That stamp is a sworn record, made by an independent person on a fixed date, that on the 20th of June 2021, my husband was competent, present, and exercising his power to change his own trust, which is the only evidence that trust was ever revocable. He built the proof himself, and he paid for it, and he drove 180 miles in one day to make sure it could not be questioned. The settlement came to a little over $271,000. It is the same money that was always there, and the same statute, and the same 2 dates on the same page in my drawer. He drove his father back a second time so that no one could ever question the paper. That is the only reason anyone can prove what my husband still had the power to do, and it is the only reason I got any of it.